Hello everybody, this is Refresh and I'm here to bring you a battle between these two Hour of Devastation Planeswalker decks versus the Defeat a God Challenge deck from Journey to Nyx. We'll be playing with 3 hero cards: the Harvester, which will let you draw a card and then discard a card by tapping; the Explorer, which says you may play an additional land on each of your turns; and the Vanquisher, which says your starting hand size is increased by 1, your maximum hand size is increased by 1. I only have 1 copy of each of these cards, so these 3 cards will apply to both decks simultaneously. We'll be playing first on normal difficulty with 3 Rollicking Throngs, and then we'll go again on hard mode with 4 Rollicking Throngs. We'll start with 8 cards apiece. Nissa draws a Woodland Stream, River Hoopa, Spring, Bounty of the Luxa, Island, Feral Prowler, Aven Stalker, and Island. I think that's worth a start, so we'll go ahead and keep this. Nicol Bolas draws a Kenra Eternal, Island, Wasp of the Bitter End, Open Fire, Marauding, Bone Slasher, Zealot of the God Pharaoh, Mountain, and Final Reward. This isn't ideal, and because we get a free mulligan, we'll go ahead and send this back. We'll draw back up to 8. Nicol Bolas has a Zealot of the God Pharaoh, Swamp, Burning Fist Minotaur, Manicore Eternal, Magma Spray, Supernatural Stamina, and Final Reward. I still don't think that we can really keep this because there's not a lot of action here and the land colors don't match, so we'll go down to 7. Now Nicol Bolas has Eternal of Harsh Truths, Ammon Eternal, Cinder Barons, Burning Fist Minotaur, Wasp of the Bitter End, Island, and Kenra Eternal. This is not great, but we do at least have all of our colors, so we'll keep this and we'll scry. That is not a land, so we'll put that at the bottom. Alright, turn 1, we'll play a Woodland Stream tapped and an Island. We'll play a Cinder Barons tapped and an Island, and then we will pass the turn to Xenagos. Xenagos will cast the top 2 cards, the first one being a Pharaoh's Brand Revelers. It has Hero's Reward when Pharaoh's Brand Revelers leaves the battlefield. Each player draws a card. And Rip to Pieces. At the beginning of combat this turn, each Reveler deals 1 damage to each player and each creature those players control. There are 4 Revelers. We'll take 4 damage per player to go down to 12, and then that is the end of Xenagos' turn. We'll use the Harvester. Nissa will draw a Forest, which we will keep, and Nicol Bolas will draw an Island, which we will also keep. We will discard the Wasp of the Bitter End, and we will discard the Aven Stalker. We'll untap. We'll draw. Nissa draws a Reason. Nicol Bolas draws a Crypt of the Eternals. We'll play the Island and the Crypt of the Eternals, giving us 1 life, going back up to 13. We will play the Island and the Forest as well over here. Nicol Bolas will tap the Cinder Barons for black and the 2 Islands, and will cast the Ammit Eternal. It has Flick 3 whenever an opponent casts a spell. Put a -1/-1 counter on Ammit Eternal whenever Ammit Eternal deals combat damage to a player, which will count as hitting any of the creatures as well. Remove all -1/-1 counters from it. Nissa will tap 4 and cast Bounty of the Luxa. At the beginning of your pre-combat main phase, remove all flood counters from Bounty of the Luxa. If no counters are removed this way, put a flood counter on Bounty of the Luxa and draw a card. Otherwise, add colorless, green, and blue to your mana pool. So, starting next turn, we'll be getting some ramp and card advantage from that spell. To remind myself, I'm just going to put a counter next to it, and we'll take it on and put it off. That is the end of our turn. We'll go to Xenagos' turn. He will cast the top 2 cards. The first one being a Dance of Flame. Whenever a Reveler attacks, Dance of Flame deals 1 damage to each player. And the second one being Xenagos' Strike. Xenagos' Strike deals 4 damage to each player. We'll take 8 damage to go down to 5. And those 2 spells will put 2 -1/-1 counters on the Ammit Eternal, bringing it down to a 3/3. At the end of the turn, we'll use Harvester. Nissa will draw an Island. Nicol Bolas will draw an Open Fire. We will discard the Eternal of Harsh Truths and the Feral Prowler, and then we'll untap. We'll draw. Nissa draws an Unsummon, and Nicol Bolas draws a Final Reward. It is now the beginning of our pre-combat main phase. The Bounty of the Luxa has no counters on it, so we'll put the counter on and we'll draw a card. It is Aerial Guide. We will play an Island. We will spend 1 mana and cast Unsummon on the Pharaoh's Brand Revelers, which will remove it from the game, and then each player will draw a card. Nissa will draw a Weaver of Currents, and Nicol Bolas will draw a Mountain. We'll play the Mountain, and we will pay black for this and tap this to play a Kenra Eternal, and we will pay a red and a blue to play a Burning Fist Minotaur. Over here, we'll pay 3 mana for a Weaver of Currents, and then we will cast Reason with the last mana, which will let us scry 3. Revealing the top 3 cards, we'll put the Angler Drake on top. We will keep the Pouncing Cheetah, and we will put the Forest at the bottom. Like that. And then we'll go to combat. The Ammit Eternal will attack and kill a Rollicking Throng, and it'll remove all the counters from the Ammit Eternal. And then we will pass the turn to Xenagos. Xenagos will cast the top 2 spells again. The first one being an Ecstatic Piper. When Ecstatic Piper enters the battlefield, Xenagos Ascend attacks this turn if able. And we'll also cast another Ecstatic Piper. There are 2 Ecstatic Pipers. Xenagos will attack this turn if able. We will chump with the Kenra Eternal, and then we will go to our turn. At the end of Xenagos' turn, we will use the Harvester. Nissa will draw an Angler Drake. Xenagos will draw a Zealot of the God Pharaoh. We will discard Open Fire, and we will discard the Aerial Guide. We'll untap, and we'll draw. Nissa draws a Pouncing Cheetah. Nicol Bolas draws a mountain. We'll play the mountain. Oh, there should also be 2 -1/-1 counters on the Ammit Eternal from those 2 spells that were cast. And then at the beginning of our pre-combat main phase, we will remove this and gain colorless green and blue. We will use that colorless green and blue with these 2 mana for 5 mana and this blue to cast an Angler Drake. When Angler Drake enters the battlefield, you may return target creature to its owner's hand. We'll remove one of these Ecstatic Pipers. It will go into the graveyard. We'll gain 4 life apiece to go up to 9. Nicol Bolas will tap all of this and cast Zealot of the God Pharaoh. And then we'll go to attacks. The Ammit Eternal will go ahead and attack and kill this Ecstatic Piper, getting us another 4 life, taking us up to 13. And then Nissa on her second main will tap out, except for the Will Stream, and cast a Pouncing Cheetah. And then we will pass to Xenagos. We'll untap. We'll cast the top 2 cards, the first one being Ripped to Pieces. At the beginning of combat this turn, each Reveler deals 1 damage to each player and each creature those players control. And Rollicking Throng. When Rollicking Throng enters the battlefield, reveal the top card of Xenagos' library, and Xenagos casts that card. This should have been removed. These 2 are put back on. And then Xenagos will cast a Serpent Dancers. When Serpent Dancers leaves the battlefield, each player draws a card. There are 4 Revelers, so we will deal 4 damage to each creature and each player. That kills every single creature on the battlefield. And then we'll take a total of 8 damage to go all the way back down to 5. At the end of the turn, we will use the Harvester. Nissa will draw a Brambleweft Behemoth and will discard Spring. Nicol Bolas will draw a Zealot of the God Pharaoh and will discard Zealot of the God Pharaoh. And then we will untap and draw. Nissa will draw an Aven Reedstalker, and Nicol Bolas will draw Crypt of the Eternals. We'll play Crypt of the Eternals and gain 1 life to go back up to 6. And then Nicol Bolas will tap this for black, and we'll tap these 2 and these 2 and play Final Reward, exiling the Serpent Dancers, which will get us a card each. Nicol Bolas draws another mountain. We'll play the mountain. Nissa will draw a Pouncing Cheetah, and then we'll put a counter on that and draw another card. We have a Forest, and for that, I think we need a Chumper, so we will play River Hoopa and the Aven Reedstalker. And then we will pass to Xenagos. Xenagos will cast the top 2 cards. The first one being a Rollicking Throng, which lets it cast another card. Being Xenagos' Scorn, Xenagos gains Trample until end of turn and attacks turn if able. And then we'll also cast a Ecstatic Piper, which lets Xenagos attack. So Xenagos is attacking with Trample. We have to block it as best we can. We will block it with the Aven Reedstalker to absorb 3 damage, and we'll take 3 to go down to 3. Then we will untap. We'll draw. Nissa draws a Spring. Nicol Bolas draws a Magma Spray. Nicol Bolas will fire off the Magma Spray, killing the Ecstatic Piper, getting us 4 life, taking us back up to 7. We will gain 3 mana from the Bounty of the Luxa. Nissa will spend 1 green and 2 blues to cast the Brambleweft Behemoth with that remaining mana. And then we will hold the other 3 to bring in a Pouncing Cheetah if we need it. And then we will pass the turn to Xenagos. Xenagos will cast the top 2 cards again. The first one being Impulsive Return. Return 2 cards named Ecstatic Piper from Xenagos' graveyard to the battlefield at the beginning of combat. Impulsive Return deals damage to each player equal to the number of revelers on the battlefield. We will return both Ecstatic Pipers in the graveyard to the battlefield. Xenagos is going to attack this turn. We'll cast the next spell, which is another Ecstatic Piper. Oh, Xenagos should be untapped. We're going to take 14 damage before Xenagos even attacks, and we will perish. Alright, we'll be back with game 2 after that disappointing loss. Despite our utter destruction in the previous game, we're going to be going up against Xenagos in hard mode with 4 Rollicking Throngs. I don't think we'll survive, but who knows, we might not see those impulsive returns or ripped to pieces. We'll go ahead and draw 8 cards apiece. Nissa draws an Island, Avid Reclaimer, Feral Prowler, Forest, Aven Reedstalker, Pouncing Cheetah, Arrow Guide, and Forest. I think that's okay to keep. Nicol Bolas draws Chimera Eternal, Supernatural Stamina, Island, Mountain, Island, Burning Fist Minotaur, Swamp, and Cinder Barrens. It's land heavy, but I think we can keep this as well. We'll go ahead and begin our first turn with an Island and a Forest. We'll tap both and play the Feral Prowler. We will play the Swamp and the Mountain over here. We'll tap both and play the Chimera Eternal. And then we'll pass the turn to Xenagos. Xenagos will cast the top 2 cards, the first one being Ecstatic Piper. When Ecstatic Piper enters the battlefield, Xenagos' Ascendant attacks this turn if able. And the second one being Xenagos' Strike. Xenagos' Strike deals 4 damage to each player. We'll take 8 damage right now and go down to 12. Xenagos is going to attack. We'll block with the Feral Prowler, which will die, and then draw us a card, which is a Forest. At the end of Xenagos' turn, we'll use the Harvester. Nissa draws a Island, and Nicol Bolas draws an Open Fire. We will discard the Aerial Guide, and we will discard the Supernatural Stamina. We'll untap, and we'll draw. Nissa draws a Woodland Stream. Nicol Bolas draws a Swamp. Nissa will play the Forest and the Woodland Stream tapped. Nicol Bolas will play the Cinder Barrens tapped and an Island. There's no point to attacking now because we can't properly trade for anything, but Nicol Bolas will also play the Burning Fist Minotaur so that we can start getting the beats in next turn. And then we'll pass to Xenagos. Xenagos will untap, and Xenagos will play the top 2 cards. The first one being Serpent Dancers. It has Death Touch. It's a 2/4. When Serpent Dancers leave the battlefield, each player draws a card. And then we'll cast the last card, which is Ecstatic Piper. When it enters the battlefield, again, Xenagos is going to attack. We will put the Chimera Eternal in front of that, and the Chimera Eternal will die. And then at the end of the turn, we'll use the Harvester. Nissa draws an Ambuscade, and Nicol Bolas draws an Island. We will discard the Island, and we will discard Avid Reclaimer. Also in the end step, we'll go ahead and tap all 3 of these and play the Aven Reedstalker as well. We'll untap. We'll draw. Nissa draws a Forest. Nicol Bolas draws a Visage of Bolas. We'll play the Swamp and the Island. We'll play a Forest and an Island. Nissa will cast the Pouncing Cheetah, and then we'll cast Ambuscade, which will give the Pouncing Cheetah +1/+0, and it'll deal damage to a creature. It'll deal damage to the Serpent Dancers, killing it. We'll each draw a card. That's a Nissa's Encouragement over here, and a Chimera Eternal over here. We'll go to our attack step. Aven Reedstalker and Burning Fist Minotaur will kill both of the Ecstatic Pipers, getting us 8 life to go back up to 20. Bolas will cast Visage of Bolas, which will let him search his library. When Visage of Bolas enters the battlefield, you may search your library and or graveyard for a card named Nicol Bolas, the Deceiver, reveal it, and put it into your hand. If you search your library this way, shuffle it. There's the Deceiver. It'll go into our hand. We'll shuffle. On the second main phase, we will tap this for black and tap the Mountain, and we'll also play a Chimera Eternal. And then we'll pass to Xenagos. Xenagos untaps. Xenagos will cast the top 2 cards, the first one being Impulsive Charge. At the beginning of combat this turn, all revelers gain haste until end of turn and attack this combat if able. And the second one being an Impulsive Return. Return 2 cards named Ecstatic Piper from Xenagos' graveyard to the battlefield at the beginning of combat this turn. Impulsive Return deals damage to each player equal to the number of revelers on the battlefield. So we got 2 Ecstatic Pipers returning to the battlefield. We have 6 Ecstatic Pipers on the battlefield, which will deal 12 damage to us, taking us all the way down to 8. And then all the revelers will attack this turn along with Xenagos. So we will have to chump Xenagos with the Kenra Eternal, we will trade one of the Ecstatic Pipers with the Pouncing Cheetah, and we will take 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 damage to go down to 2. That Ecstatic Piper dies, Kenra Eternal dies, Pouncing Cheetah dies. We'll gain 4 life from that dead one to get us back up to 6 at least. And then we will go to our turn. Before the end of the turn, we'll use the Harvester. Nissa will draw a Spring, and Nicol Bolas will draw a Zealot of the God Pharaoh. We will discard Open Fire, and we will discard the Forest. We'll untap. We'll draw. Nissa draws a Weaver of Currents, and Nicol Bolas draws a Mountain. We'll play the Mountain. We'll tap everything. Cast Nicol Bolas, the Deceiver. He'll start with 5 loyalty counters, and we'll immediately tick him up to 8, do 3, and kill one of the Rollicking Throngs. It's 3 life loss. I'm going to consider this like a Planeswalker redirect thing, so redirecting to one of the Rollicking Throngs. And then we will attack with the Burning Fist Minotaur to kill the other Ecstatic Piper, bringing us all the way up to 10 life. We will cast both Weaver of Currents and Spring over here, searching out a Forest and putting it onto the battlefield tapped. We'll shuffle. We'll pass Xenagos. Xenagos untaps. Xenagos casts the top 2 cards, the first one being Impulsive Charge. At the beginning of combat this turn, all revelers gain haste until end of turn and attack this combat if able. And an Ecstatic Piper, which means that everybody's coming in on the attack. We will block Xenagos with the Weaver, and we'll block the Ecstatic Piper with the Aven Reedstalker. We'll take 3, but we'll gain 4 back from the Ecstatic Piper, going up to 11. We'll lose the Weaver. Xenagos will lose the Piper, and we will loot at the end of the turn. Nissa draws a Brambleweth Behemoth. Nicol Bolas draws a Mountain. We will discard the Mountain. We will discard the Brambleweth Behemoth, and then we'll untap. We'll draw. Nissa draws an Angler Drake. Nicol Bolas draws a Crypt of the Eternals. We will tick up Nicol Bolas again to 11, which will cause Xenagos to lose 3 life, which we will redirect to one of the Rollicking Throngs to kill it. Nissa will tap everything to play an Angler Drake. When it enters the battlefield, it can return a target creature to the opponent's hand. That will be a Rollicking Throng. And then we will tap 4 to play Zealot of the God Pharaoh. And we will also play the Crypt of the Eternals to gain another life, to go to 12. And we'll pass and go to Xenagos' turn. Xenagos untaps. We'll cast the top 2 cards. The first one being Ripped to Pieces. At the beginning of combat this turn, each Reveler deals 1 damage to each player and each creature that player controls. And then Impulsive Return. Return 2 cards named Ecstatic Piper from Xenagos' graveyard to the battlefield at the beginning of combat this turn. Impulsive Return deals damage to each player equals the number of Revelers on the battlefield. So we're going to get 2 Ecstatic Pipers back from the graveyard to the battlefield. The Ecstatic Pipers and the Rollicking Throng will deal 6 damage to us off the Impulsive Return, and then 6 damage to us off the Ripped to Pieces, as well as 3 damage to every creature, killing all of the creatures except for the Angler Drake. But the 12 damage to our face is what kills us, and that ends the game before even Xenagos can attack to finish us off. That was pretty hideous. We lost again. But again, those 2 cards, specifically Ripped to Pieces and Impulsive Return, are some of the strongest cards in Xenagos' arsenal, and so perhaps it's not a surprise that we lost to them. Let me know what you thought about the games in the comments below. If I made any major play errors or rules errors, also let me know so that I can get better at this. If you enjoyed the video, hit the like button. If you'd like to see more such videos, hit subscribe. Thanks for watching. This was Refresh, and I will see you next time.